Okay, no problem at all. I'm Jay Dwayne Garnett. I am, look, an Augusta, Georgia native, born and raised. But I consider Columbia, South Carolina home because that's where I went and did undergrad, grad school there, got married, bought my first home, all of those great things there. But my wife and I started an organization in 2017 called Love is a Parable. The initial start from that is I was very successful in higher ed, and we wanted to find a way to give back. So what we were thinking was going to start out as an organization that was just going to do random acts of kindness ended up becoming an organization that really teaches individuals about love and shaping what our vision is to see a world living in unity through love. So we want to bring people together, and we are crazy enough to believe that love is the way. We actually have the audacity to believe that love can do it. And we have a unique way of looking at love. And we found that the way that we do things has put us at the table with some key people that is bringing about some positive change. And that's because we look at love from a values based perspective, which you kind of alluded to before. And we help people achieve personal fulfillment so then they could actually establish meaningful relationships with not only themselves, but with others. So, as far as educational background, just so people know, yes, I have a Master in Health Services Administration, a concentration in management, and then I also have an undergrad in therapeutic rec with a minor in community rec and a minor in music education. Don't ask. 19 years in higher education. I have done it all from student services, enrollment, healthcare, the list goes on and on. But my passion now is giving back and helping people come together through love. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And the people that are tuning in from Facebook and YouTube, if you want to get into this conversation live, go ahead and come over to Instagram at Love This. It has, you can see it at the top. And come on over there because that's what we are. We're only doing this to bring awareness that the conversation is happening in Instagram land. You can see it at the top. And come on over there because that's fine. Yeah, I was turning it up just to see if it was working right, and then I turned it down. I'm sorry, but go ahead. Honey and Hustle. Of course, no problem at all. Look, we have some of our love advocates that are on right now. You have Lenora with Lenora Pours, and then you have Teens Have a Voice too that's on as well. So those are some of our corporate advocates and our love advocates over there at those organizations as well. So thank you guys for tuning in. But yes, our core values are simple: love, unity, and kindness. That's what we build everything on. Like I talked about earlier, our vision is to see a world living in unity through love. And we believe the best way to get there is like our mission outline is by promoting our core values: love, unity, and kindness while providing love education, which is one of the things that you were talking about earlier, which is our home of our love advocacy program, but also love advocacy, because once you become a love advocate, you naturally want to advocate for love and helping to bring other people together. And then, of course, love wellness, where you keep a lifestyle with a what we call a love consciousness, meaning where you kind of just love focus. all the time. And that's what we do within our mission. Ways that we measure our impact is through the various courses that we have. We have what we call implicit bias workshops, but we're actually changing that from implicit bias to just value workshops, because bias is nothing more than just values. And bias has taken on such a negative term, whereas values is just what it is. So we have several values workshops. And then we also have a junior advocate and, of course, a love advocacy program. And then we have several community partnerships where we do customized curriculum to bring in training from a value-based perspective to forge unity, inclusion, but also drive productivity for organizations as well. Well, no, everything is down, and I got my headsets on. I don't have anything on this side, but you sound perfect on my side. It's probably a white noise machine that you hear. Let me try this. That's so you won't hear my kids jumping and slamming things. Let's do it this way.
Yes. Yeah, that's two of the babies in the background. Totally for that. So, anyway, getting back to the second session of the Love Advocacy training that I'm in, I loved this being second session. Actually, after the session, Jake was like, "That was heavy, huh?" I think that he thought that a lot of people in the session, like including myself, maybe some of the faces that I was making during the session, falsely indicated that I was having a hard time with and how they inhibit me sometimes from connecting with others and having meaningful relationships or harmonious relationships with others. So what Jay does is he puts our values in this context of something that he calls the sacred box. And we all have this, we each have a sacred box, right? Jay, it's a box, metaphorical box
Right.
that holds all of our conscious and subconscious values. So can you talk with us a little bit about the sacred box, what it's all about, why it's important to understand our sacred box and our values, subconscious values and conscious values, and how we can notice them more maybe?
Most definitely. And before I begin, guys in YouTube and Facebook land, come on over to Instagram so we can see your comments. We're just putting there so you'll be aware. So a lot of them were saying hello and things like that. So come on over to YouTube. Come on over to Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook so you can get part of this discussion. But to answer your question about the sacred box, a lot of us have the best way I say this all the time. We've all had that conversation where it seemed like the conversation is going okay, but we say one thing and it seemed like we lost the other party. They either get mad or they shut down, or it even happened to ourselves where it seemed like the conversation is going okay and we're like, hold on, that's not funny anymore. Or that's not funny, let's not play with that. Well, that is your sacred box. A sacred box is nothing more than values that we deem extremely important, that have become sacred to us, and we put them in a special place. And they're really off limits to anybody else that we don't give permission to. The thing about our sacred box is that for most of us, we have key values that we are aware of, but it's those unconscious values that we're not really sure about. And also, your unconscious values hide as a conscious value. Like, I can give a great example. We had someone who was going through an uncovering session, and anytime they hate when people lie. Seem like that's a logic thing, like, oh, I understand, I hate when people lie. But as we started to uncover, it wasn't necessarily that this particular person hated for people to lie. It was this person hated for people to judge. And so when a person lies, they are making a decision within themselves to say whether or not I can handle the truth or not. And the person said, I don't like that. Don't judge and don't assume I can't handle something. Give me the option to say yes or no that I can handle it. So what we then found out is that anytime this person is in an area where they're being judged, they tend to get upset. And so that's when this person now knows anytime that I'm in a area or predicament on my job or at home where I'm being heavily scrutinized, I'm going to become sensitive. And I'm not going to look at it from an open perspective. I am really going to start protecting me. Well, we do this with a lot of things. And we're in a society where people have convinced us that we need to tell people the things that we value. No, you don't. You don't have to tell anybody anything that you value. But what you can do is let people know when you're uncomfortable. And you need to know what it is that you value and why you value it. Because this is how we see the world, through the things that we value. Jay, give me another example. I'm glad you said that. I value education. Is that saying that people who don't have higher education is less important than others? No, it's not saying that. But what I realize, if I'm looking at something, especially in the academic area where I came from, I am prone to look at credentials. So now what Jay needs to know is, okay, you're going into this arena, you're no longer in an academic setting, so give everyone a fair shot and listen to them. If we don't do that assessment, a lot of us are making judgments or having actions that are associated with our values that we're fully unaware of, that could be further dividing us than bringing us together.
I want you to keep going. We had a conversation about this earlier on today, and you got so deep. But I'm bringing up my notes so I can, if things don't come to mind, I can poke and prod and get into uncover the things that we discussed earlier. But okay, so the values, sacred box, knowing our values. Talk to me a little bit about how our values, when we're not aware of them and how to manage them, get in the way of having a positive relationship with others.
Yes. Once we have this sacred box, which consists of our values, it shaped the whole concept of who we are. A lot of us, and let me explain this, a lot of us right now, if we were to ask the question, who are you or who are we? A lot of people will begin to tell you either their gifts, skills, and talents, or the things that other people have seen in them. And that's because a lot of our concept is the results of the interactions and exchanges we've had with other people. We're asking you, okay, well, some of the things that you value, do you value them or do other people value them and you assume you should value them? But whatever the reason is, when you get to a place where you value them, you say, okay, well, because I value these things, therefore I am these things that I value. And Dr. Sergey, who's a forensics marketer, came up with the self-congruity theory, which basically says that people make purchasing decisions based on their personality types. Well, we've expounded that theory to say, well, not only do people make purchasing decisions, but they make decisions, period, based on their concept of who they are. So, further explained, there is what is called an ideal self and a self-image. Your self-image is who you are organically, and your ideal self is how the world sees you. If there is a conflict between who you are organically and how the world sees you, it affects your self-esteem. And 9 out of 10, your self-esteem is lower when there's a conflict between ideal self and self. This is important because your concept of self is how you develop your expectations. Usually the lower the self-esteem, the higher the expectations, and usually the higher the self-esteem, the lower the expectations. Because expectations are nothing more than scenarios we've created in our mind, boundaries that we've created in our mind to say, okay, if this event was to take place, this is how I'm going to conduct myself. And Kevin had a question about who is this person, want to find research on this. It's Sergey, Sirgy, Dr. Sergey, self-congruity theory. I'll put it in the comments after it so you can have it as well. Sorry about that. You know I'm used to doing both.
That expectations actually are not a bad thing to have expectations of people, especially in your close relationships with the people that you care about the most and are closest to in your life. It's important to have expectations of them because that means that when you have these expectations and they are willing, they can meet your needs as a person and your values as a person, because our values are very important to us, our needs are important to us. But at the same time, I think what you're saying, Jay, is that when we have values that maybe kind of like a little messy and complex to explain, so I'm having a little bit of difficulty, but I think that, so what keeps coming to mind is actually a quote by Viktor Frankl. Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor who wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning. And he said that between stimulus and response, there is space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and freedom. So when I think about what you're talking about, like the lower the self-esteem, the higher the expectations, and that being a negative thing is because when we're in communication, say with someone that has very different values to us. So say we're talking about something political, and I have certain political values, you have totally different political values and views, and I say something, or you say something to me that I just don't value and I disagree with. I can easily, in that situation, jump to conclusions, respond reactively, get upset because what you're saying is not in line with my values and how I feel. And I have this expectation that you should basically meet my value and my need in that situation when that's not necessarily correct. Because then, if that happens, we're not able to have discourse with one another. The conversation ends because I get upset and I leave or walk away or whatever it may be. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about expectations in that regard. Because sometimes when I think of expectations, I think of it as good thing to have expectations of people, but I think that in some situations, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, and I don't think expectations are good or bad. I just think expectations are expectations. And the reason why I'm saying that is, but expectations are created as a form of security and protection. And it's really to offer you as an individual the security and protection that you need, not necessarily anybody else. And that's the part I think that we miss. And so when I was saying the lower the self esteem, which is a bad thing, but the expectations are created to protect myself, meaning because I'm uncomfortable with said things, I'm putting A, B, C, and D in place. That's why we have so many expectations. But as we become more and more confident in who we are, it's less expectations we have on individuals and on so many things because we begin to appreciate the fluidity of life and humaneness. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, for me, it brings more true to almost say the higher self-esteem, the more accepting we are of others. It's not that we can't have expectations, and I hear what you're saying, I understand what you're saying,
mhm.
but I feel like, yeah, the higher the self-esteem, the more confident we are in ourselves, and the more that we know ourselves and have that self-knowledge of our values and our sacred gods, the more that we can accept others for who they are and their values. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense as well. But the reason why we call it an expectation is because the next layer is what's important. What happens when we have an unmet expectation, right?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
When we have an unmet expectation, which a lot of people don't realize, instantly when an expectation is unmet, we're dealing with betrayal right there. And we know from the onset of an unmet expectation if we are going to forgive or not forgive. And that's where that confidence comes into play or that self esteem comes into play because we tend to have more unforgivable transgressions, if you will, when we have a lower self esteem. So we tend to take unmet expectations sometimes as a violation when all of them are not a violation of person. It's the perception of that. I can give you a good example. I'm on a call because our name is Love is a Parable. The very first thing someone says is, "Oh, you're about to preach to us," and I'm ready. No, I'm not going to preach to you. That's what you have church for. That's not me. But I already know that you put me in a box because of the name, and there's an assumption associated with it. And unfortunately, I didn't meet their expectation. And the very thing that they said after the seminar as well, I wasn't expecting that. You see what I mean? I still didn't meet their expectation. They still dealt with a level of betrayal, but we even perceive betrayal as a bad thing all the time. And it's not. Betrayal is no, I was truly expecting something and I was misled in my assumption. So that didn't happen. What am I going to do? Am I going to forgive or not forgive? So if I choose not to forgive, this is where we do deal with some things such as bitterness, but also resentment, because that forces us to revisit the place in which we were betrayed. Like it plays in our mind. The best way to say that, if you have ever met in your life a you always person, as soon as you do something wrong, say you always. I always? Every single time, I always. The you always individuals typically struggle with forgiveness, and that's because they take an unmet expectation as a direct insult to their self esteem and their character of who they are. Whereas a person who has a higher self esteem understand that this expectation was created for me. So, say if you didn't meet that expectation, using your term, oh, things happen, or, well, Samantha said that, but she didn't really mean it the way that I took it. I've already decided to forgive you so we can have a conversation about, Samantha, this kind of offended me, or I thought this. And then we go through the process of saying, you know what? I'm cool with that. I'm gonna let that go. Now I have a learning now I have a new learning perspective on it, and that expectation either has been moved or modified. See what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I would love to talk a little bit about self-esteem and how people can go about cultivating higher self-esteem and why
Well, I mean, let's think about this, guys. When we come into this world, the very first 2 years, what are we dealing with? I don't know much about you guys, but I'm from the South, and in the South, we say a lot of no and I. I now. Yep, AHT. I. Stop that. Don't do that. No, so you got to think the first 2 years, a child is being told no. Why are we telling that child no? Well, it's because we're trying to protect them. And we want them to live. We want them to know the suitable things to do. And we want them to continue to progress in what we perceive as a healthy manner. None of us are thinking about conditional programming. None of us are thinking like, no, I'm trying to show this child, I'm reshaping their mind. Nobody is thinking that. No one is thinking that I am telling them not to trust your natural instinct. No one is thinking that. No one is also thinking that we are actually killing their natural desire to hear their own voice. No one is thinking about those things. So guess what happens? For 17 years at least, people are bombarded by the expectations of others. What should we do? How we should act? What should we say? The list goes on and on. And then what happens in adulthood? Well, what do you want to do? What is your inner voice telling me? Well, my inner voice sounds like mom's voice, dad's voice, pastor's voice, coach's voice, teacher's voice. The list goes on and on. I don't know what my voice sounds like. And so we go on this journey of trying to find ourselves, which a lot of times causes us to make some damaging mistakes or perpetuate something that we don't really subscribe to or believe in our hearts of hearts. Because if I do something that is different than how I was reared, it may cause me my livelihood. It may cause me connections and family. It may cause me things that I'm not willing to risk. So what do? I go with what is expected of me. So it's very important to understand that of who you are and have a true self-esteem, because it's okay to say, I don't agree with something. Conflict doesn't have to be a negative thing. And for some strange reason, people believe you have to become extremely upset and angry just to be honest. How many times have we heard, well, you better stop before I can really tell you something that's going to hurt your feelings? Also, the truth is supposed to be punishment? No, the truth is something that should be readily available. What did you say? Right, the truth should be there, and you shouldn't use the truth to hurt me, because that meant you are okay for me living a lie. But it's very important to have some level of high self-esteem, because the more you are in tune with you, there are certain things. I remember growing up, I grew up in a family where I didn't act like a lot of them. I really felt like, why do I think different? Why all of that? It wasn't until I was 14 years old, I found out that my mom's biological father was a different man. And so when I met this whole different side of the family, a lot of light bulbs went off like, oh, this is why I act like this. This is why I do this. Because it's people that are like me. But her withholding the truth from me made me question, like, am I really this weird? No, it is people that are like me that are out there. And that truth I should have been privy to early on, because during my developmental years, I would have known that, hey, nothing is wrong. This is normal for our family, for our DNA. So it's very important to understand who you are and accept truth as truth without any judgment, good or bad. Let's not put good or bad on it, because those are relative, but accept things for what they are. And when you start to realize, when you accept things for what they are, you'll realize that the world is conditioned with a rainpour of misnomers. Like, I know the people that are viewing right now are going to disagree with me as soon as I say it, but I guarantee you, you can't prove me wrong. You are perfect just the way you are right now. How do we know this? Everybody, you, Samantha, everybody that is on, you are perfect. There is nobody in this world that is like you. Only time imperfections exist is when we make a comparison. That's the only time imperfections exist. That was a misnomer. Nobody is perfect. That's a lie. You are perfectly you. No one will outbeat you at being you. I promise you. And as soon as you understand that, your esteem go up. I can't do things like Samantha, but I can do things like Jay. And I bet you Samantha can't outdo Jay at being Jay, and I can't outdo Samantha at being Samantha. I can go pose and take the same picture Samantha take, and I guarantee you I won't pull it off. What you think, Samantha? You think that works, Samantha?
What was that?
You think this will work, this pose?
What?
You had one of them poses like that. I was like, you think that'll work on me? Wouldn't work.
Sorry, I was actually reading something from my notes.
Uh-huh.
So I actually missed the last, 1 second of what you said, so.
Oh, it's okay to ignore. This is not the first time you ignored me, Samantha.
Never. I just want to make a touch on the good stuff for people because we're already at 35 minutes.
Okay.
Forever. Let's talk a little bit about
Ooh, I'm so glad that this is in a book now, so people can't steal it. You remember when we first started, we were like, we might need to write this down, but no. Oh yeah, no, I was remembering like these are used to be. Remember, I told you the book came from like random thoughts, and these are like different things that we used to come up with. And I remember the day that the elevator came to me, and it's guys, have you ever gotten an elevator? And you just, for some strange reason, you didn't press that button to go to the next floor. Oh, come on, I know somebody has done it. Don't make me feel like I'm the only one. But still, you press this button, you don't press the button, and you look around like, why is this elevator not moving? And you're like, oh, I didn't press the button. Has that happened to you, Samantha? So when it dawned on me, am I prepared for the next level? Whether I'm going up or down, am I prepared for that? And was this a way that my unconscious self said, Jay, take a moment? And then that's when it dawned on me that elevators should be like love. When people get on elevators, nobody is questioning the motives of the people on the elevator. We are even assuming that the elevator is going to perform its task. We believe that elevator is going to go where we designate for it to go. We believe the people that's on that elevator are good people. So anybody who say they got a trust issue with people lie when they get on the elevator because you trust them people because you don't know them and you trust that they're not going to harm you or anything. Well, love was supposed to be our elevator to take us to that next level. And for some strange reason, the illusions of love came as broken elevators. Where people have said, I tried that before and it just didn't work out for me. You know, I tried that makeup and it didn't work. I tried that dress on, I tried that suit on and it didn't work. I went to this church and it didn't work. I went to this mosque and it didn't work. I went to this sanctuary, it didn't work. I went to counseling and it didn't work. I went so-and-so. The list goes on of places we go to be elevated, to be lifted. And sometimes we're just let down. So what happens when we finally get inside of one of these elevators that can take us to the next level? Are we prepared? Because fear of success is a real thing. A lot of us talk about having fear of failure, but we don't really have fear of failure because a lot of us know what to do when failure happens. We are just living survivors on that. But what happens when success happens? What happens when you continue to walk in unknown territory? Nothing like what your parents showed you or your friends showed you or even people talked about. What happens then? How do I combat the urge to self-sabotage? It's by being honest. It's okay to be afraid of the unknown. But what is worse is acting like you're not afraid and doing damaging things to yourself when you're supposed to be rising, but for some strange reason you're falling or not even moving. Or when you go to a particular place expecting an outcome, but you can't even have access to get in. Somewhere we have put more faith in elevators than we've put in love. Why are we so skeptical of love? Why do the topic of love cause so much divide, but we can get in elevators with strangers and agree in that moment? True inclusion happens in elevators. Love is the elevator for humanity, and we need to take more rides together.
Change me right now, my friends. That's a good one. I love that analogy so much. I actually think that that's a beautiful place to lean off. But there is one more thing that I want to just share with people because I think it's another beautiful point, and that is how the name Love is a Parable came to me. And talking a little bit about how we are all the seed in someone's harvest. And I'll let you take it from there because I don't want to keep reading it.
No, it's fine. When you hear the name Love is a Parable, yes, it's no. If you are familiar with any of the Abrahamic faiths, you would say, okay, that sounds something that is dealing with that. Yes, I do have a spiritual background. My spiritual background was very important to me, but I've never been one of those individuals who say, oh, you have to choose this path. No, this path just happened to work for me. And I was experiencing a very low moment in my life where I was about to literally lose everything. I recently had lost my job and I recently relocated, and we just didn't have the means. And one day, literally, I'm not going to lie, and I'm not ashamed, I just cried. I called myself trying to pray to a higher power, but nothing could come out but just tears. And when I got through, it came to me, you're looking for seeds, but the seed can be quantified. And it's very important because when we're talking about things, and I believe in definitely getting ahead, when we're talking about things such as multiple streams of income, a lot of times we think multiple streams of income come from doing multiple things. But what happens when you master the one thing that you were created and purposed to do? Well, I began to just study. And so from a scriptural standpoint, if you ever read the passage, it's Luke 8:11 for those who want to know. It says in the word of God, and the seed was the word of God. Well, if the seed was the word of the Most High, the word is also described as being the Messiah, who is also described as being love. So therefore, love is the seed, which makes love is the parable. But take it a step further, we are seeds and we are harvest. We are the product of things that have happened to us, both good and bad, but those were still seeds planted. And we have a responsibility to plant seeds in other people's lives that will also produce harvest of people. From there, we began to understand if we are the seed, then we are the love. So therefore, we are the parable. So the parable that we're helping people to understand about love is individual people. Samantha is a parable. Jay is a parable. My baby brother just came on. Mike is a parable. Lenora is a parable. The list goes on. And you, my friends, even the ones I have not had the pleasure of meeting just yet, you are a parable. And there's a sacred box within you that you identify with. And I want to go on that journey. We want to go on that journey because you'll realize that sacred box, that parable within you, is the key to how you see the world. And it's the key to bring unity, but it also is a key that could bring division if we don't attend to our own sacred box and the Jews that we value. So that's how Love is a Parable became, and that's how we achieve our unity, achieve our mission of unity through love, is showing people at the core of who you are, not the things you've been through, not the things that you've done, but at the core of who you are is love. And once you uncover the true love, you don't discover you uncover you, because who you are, who you were meant to be, is always there. It's just blanketed by the experiences that have happened in your life So we help you uncover that so you can find that core of love, so you can see through a love lens, but also see others as well.
Yeah. And just a heads up for you guys, Jay, I want you to clarify whether your organization is non-secular or secular.
We are an education nonprofit, which means we just educate. We don't have a religious preference or a political preference at all. But we are very honest about our path. So that's why it may be a little confusing to some. No. And one of the things that, and you don't even know this, but one of the tasks that all the leadership has to do is study all religions. Study all religions, all faiths, so you can learn about all people. Because how can you meet people where they are if you come in with a skewed lens? So we're all challenged to learn about everything. Yes, from Zoroastrianism to Buddhism, from Shintoism to all the mythologies. We want you to learn about that, so that way you can be in tune. And it's about what you bring to the table, not necessarily who's inviting who's over for dinner. You know what I mean?
Jay is not trying to convert anybody into anything. All of his teachings are very universal. It's all about unity and beauty and everything, including all of the religions. But the advocacy training and the other work and educational stuff that you do.
Nothing has a religious overtone.
Yeah, that's not the big component of it. And it's very practical, pragmatic, feet on the ground. And what I love most about what you do, Jay, and your team is that you're really encouraging people to be that force of love. That it is us as individuals who have the power to put love into action and to do everything from that place. And so I just appreciate so much the great work that you're doing. Thank you so much for coming on with me tonight. And why don't you just share with people where they can find you? What's your website? You guys have an Instagram, but yeah, what's the best place to find you?
I will, but I also want to thank you for doing your part as well in helping bring people together. I do want people to know that, guys, we can fight multiple things together. We're multidimensional human beings, which means we can address many concerns together. And even though we fall under the same umbrella, we are addressing different things, but the same thing. And the same thing is bringing people together. We show you who you are. She shows you how who you are can impact that change by doing things, mobilizing love. She mobilizes love. We just help you identify it. When we say there's a safe way to say that, we help you identify, you help them mobilize it, put it into action, showing them what it is, what the love ethic is about, showing how things can forge unity, how you can end things, how you can break down things, how you can begin. And we need more people like that. So I definitely don't want anybody to have an individual type mindset. And I want us to know that we can all work together, literally.
Yeah, I think we definitely need to move away from an individualistic mindset to an interdependent mindset. But that's definitely a big topic of discussion right now.
Man, listen.
We're coming to realize that this individualistic mindset, the place that we've been operating from, isn't working for us. We have to find a way to come together, to do things together, to understand each other, to understand our values and other people's values, and how they can coexist in a really beautiful way. My job is just to inspire people. That's what I see my job as being, is to bring people like you on and others who can share about the really incredible work that you're doing and the tools and resources that are out there that people have access to should they want to try to experience more about how they can put love into action, what tools and resources are available to them for doing that. So, yeah.
Yes. And if you want to get connected with us and our organization, just visit All Things Love is a Parable, literally. You go to loveisaparable.com. If you go there, you really find our social media presence, but also find a lot about the work that we do, and the places that we have had impact. Our statistics and everything is there. You can even donate to our cause as well, and different initiatives as well. So visit loveisaparable.com, and we're on all social media platforms as Love is a Parable as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dan. Thank you to all those who tuned in. I hope you all have a wonderful night.
Thank you so much for having me. Good night.